Excellent. So as I said at the beginning, just before you guys went into the breakout rooms. Oh, sorry, hang on, let me just. Sorry, something popped up and I wasn't. Sorry, I think I was transcribing at the same time and I didn't want that. So sorry, as I said at the beginning, before you guys went into the breakout rooms, I thought it would be useful today to think a little bit about your role as a wellbeing lead and how things may have changed over time. And really just to acknowledge, I think my colleague Dr. May Coombe did an introduction to being a wellbeing lead, I think earlier this year in March. So some of you may have attended that meeting, and some of the slides I will just review today are based on her presentation. And yeah, we are now going basically in the presentation part and the group discussion. So just for people who are not here live, when they listen back, that this is where we are at. And then just as a little recap, these were the questions for the breakout rooms, just, yeah, helping you guys to think a little bit how your experience has been. And I wondered, before I go into the brief presentation, if there was any feedback from your small group discussions, anything you feel would be worth sharing or, yeah, worth highlighting.
If I can say hi, my name is Mandy. I work in HR, and I'm not sure if other people would probably agree with me. I think it's really helped me to understand the bottom line problems when we look at directorates sitting in HR to see what goes on. So my role actually allows me to speak to matrons and service managers and OSMs. And some of the sessions that have been ongoing has really helped me to look at the feedback. So I think we need to have our HR buddies on board with this. And I would say that to any division. I mean, I work for Suwon, but for any other division, I think it's really, really important that take it seriously. So if I was the simple statement I gave was, look after your people, they will look after your business. And it should be the slogan almost to say we really need to look after our people. And that's all I would say.
Thank you very much. And I think that's a really important point. And I guess also, for I guess a lot of clinical teams, just to extend that it's so important that we look after ourselves, that we can also then look after the patients, of course, we care for, because that really goes hand in hand. And I think you really hit the nail there as well, that of course the idea initially was that ideally every team, every service, every directorate should have a dedicated wellbeing lead, or ideally even a few, because we do appreciate it's not meant to that you guys are now responsible for everyone's well-being and all the rest of it. That's not how it works. It's more, I guess, the link person. And as I said, we will reflect on this a little bit more, but and I think what we have seen is that some teams or some divisions are better and more equipped and have more systems in place, and other teams, some teams don't have any well-being leads or noise systems, and that is then when usually things are more challenging. Joyce, I can see your hand is up as well.
Yeah, no, I think what I noticed from my breakout groups, it was really nice conversations that we had, and we're all interlinked with doing further training and having the knowledge. But I think because I'm so passionate about the wellbeing lead, I also came across a bit of a problem, whereas that because I now sort of my time is devoted, a little bit of my time is devoted on staff wellbeing. But if I wanted to order something, the question that my line manager said was that, is there some sort of resource for staff? Because she asked me the question, the things that you're wanting, is it for staff or is it for patients? And because I said, well, it's for staff, it's like, I'm not sure whether, budget wise we can do that. So I just it made me realize today that, if we are looking after staff and are sort of wanting things for them to be in the workplace, where can I get money from to support staff? It's always been about patients, but now I'm almost focused on patients and staff as well, but I don't know where to get funding from or resources to get things in. I mean, it might be something as simple as an ice pack or something like that. I know on the wards we have those patients, but we constantly seem to be banging our head or banging our arms or doing something. And I sort of believe that well-being for me in my workplace is keeping people in work if we can. But then I realised, oh, we don't have the money, maybe.
Yes. And of course, we all know, resources or money is always tight and all the rest of it. I think, before I barge in, anyone, any feedback or any solutions or, comments for Joyce?
So the one thing that I would say, Joyce, is that the charity has a wellbeing fund, and I would perhaps put together what you need sort of now and what you can predict you might need in the future, and just go onto their website, and they have a form to complete. And so if you ask your manager or whatever to think together what the staff need, they're very keen to help, particularly with what they're calling COVID recovery funds. So examples that I can think of for if you think about a staff room, and if a staff room is in need of some equipment, that's a perfect example of what they would fund. So just put together some thoughts with your manager as to the sorts of things that would help you all. They have what's called a small fund under £3,000. So do think long term a bit. So do it all in one go, think what you might need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's really helpful. Thank you, Anna. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. And I guess linked to that, I think the more specific you can make it, or if you have a specific project in mind, that's also usually, in my experience, then people are more likely to support or fund, because it's almost like, there's a good understanding where the money goes to and what the impact can be and all the rest of it, rather than having more vague or general, we need money to, improve staff well-being and all the rest of it. So a little bit like, what Anna said, but also you seem to have already clear ideas in mind what you actually want, and maybe what sometimes is useful, possibly giving several, maybe options, ideally what you want, but what is really necessary at least, or short, medium and long term, so that, if people are happy to give more money, you might even get more. And, otherwise it's maybe at least a starting point if there's just funding for one project, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful.
The other thing I had in mind, because you mentioned, about if it's with regards to staff well-being and not necessarily patient care. Well, I would argue, and there's definitely good research out there, we do know if we as staff feel better, more content, less distressed, less at risk of burnout and all the rest of it, of course our patient care will be better as well. So sometimes it might be useful to come from that angle as well, that it is for staff support, but actually these are then the outcomes for patients, better, as I said, better patient care, or we would expect better patient satisfaction with care, or whatever it is. So there's definitely lots of research out there supporting this.
That's a good angle to come from. Yeah, thank you.
And sometimes I find just also to get the wider support, again, you may be in a team or, working with managers who are very open, or where you can discuss. I know sometimes I think it's more difficult for people, and that usually gets others on board as well, if they understand, well, actually, this is the wider implication. We need to look at the system, not just it's about staff feeling better, if that makes sense, even if that's, of course, important in its own right as well.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. It's very helpful.
Not to worry. Any other comments from your group discussions? Because otherwise I would then just move on, and basically, as I said, what we we'll do for the remaining time, just generally, reflect together and think a little bit about, how you guys feel and, what may have changed. So let me just click on the next slide. So I think when you guys started, or when May did her talk in March, I think, there was this really the notion, or the thinking about what actually contributed or made you decide to be a wellbeing lead. Was this, maybe recognition that, the well-being of your own well-being or others' well-being matters? Was it stepping up to support colleagues? Did you feel like, well, it's struggling to say no? Maybe you were asked by a line manager or someone else in the team to do this. maybe you felt this is important to you because you had previous experience or your own experiences of difficulties with well-being, or also maybe a desire to be more responsive with regards to the global pandemic. So there might have been different reasons to why you choose to be a well-being lead. I don't know, are these things with resonate with your decisions, or did you have completely different reasons to why you decided to be a well-being lead?
I think if I was to share my example, I work in an admin team and I was definitely missing my colleagues. But I missed the printer so much, so I wanted to come back and see the printer each week. And I thought, yeah, we need to look after each other. And suddenly standing in the printer made me realize how nice it was to be able to talk to people around you in an open plan office. And we don't have that anymore. So from there, we started to have Wednesday lunchtime conversations, staff conversations. And then that kicked off. So we were talking not about work. We don't tend to talk about work on Wednesday lunchtimes. And, it's so important that people are able to say things, although they are admin and they're working away. I mean, with clinical staff, sometimes, yes, they are there and they're working really hard and, they can see their colleagues and, you have, whereas people who are not able to come to work, is you don't know what's happening with them. So I think that really helped me to look out for people who were struggling, perhaps. And from there on, I decided to do that.
Thank you very much for sharing. That's a really nice example, and I guess really links into what we have discussed previously as well, thinking about alternative ways of connecting again as a team or staying connected, finding those things which before the pandemic, I guess, went without saying, or, we were just able to check in and, with each other more or less all the time, and that really has changed. But actually also what you said, or what struck me or stood out for me is actually, really paying attention to this. So again, I would like to think it's not like that we were all careless before and didn't care about our colleagues, but I think it wasn't like we were talking about it so much, or maybe it was just implicit and yeah, we all had our systems in place and, all the rest of it. But now I guess it's more of a focus, or as I said, we were forced to think about this differently. So I think that's, maybe one thing as well. Any other reflections, or as I said, does this resonate usually with what brought you guys to your role as well? I can see, sorry, Christine, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to share as well. So I stepped into the role in June when our manager went off on mat leave. And for me, I work in Here for Health, so the health and wellbeing team we're based at the hospital, but at the moment we're working from home because the renovation's been done. And I think because our team are always having sort of conversations with patients or staff, not as much because we're not on site to drop in, about health and wellbeing, I sort of felt it would be nice to step into the role to try and support my colleagues who often take a lot of the burden from people, and to try and support them to be able to, think a bit more about themselves or what we can do to keep ourselves safe, given that quite a lot of the time some of the conversations can be a bit deeper than just the general sort of lifestyle stuff.
Thank you, Christine. That's really nice to hear. I can see Joyce and Melinda have their hands up as well, but I don't know who was first, I'm afraid.
I think Melinda was first, not me.
Sorry, Joyce, you go. I'll follow you. That's okay.
Oh, okay. No, I think mine came about because I think I had some well-being issues myself, because my father passed away last year in February, and it was a really, really tough time because it was just before COVID and very stressful. And I'd taken a week off for bereavement leave, and I went back to work, and everyone's saying, "Oh, Joyce, okay, what are you doing back in work? Just lost your dad." And I was like, no, I'm fine. And then when I had my return to work, I quite clearly was not well. And then it coincided with COVID. And so, I had planned funeral arrangements for my dad, only then, it was like no places of worship where you couldn't go anywhere. So I had that, and I only so we only just buried my dad this year in February, a whole year later. So I think it sort of going through that process and my well-being being really just out of kilter. It was at a time when I went to my line manager when I went back to work and said, I don't know what my role is now, because there's also some staff changes, and I said I don't know where I fit in anymore. And so she mentioned about becoming the wellbeing lead, which I just jumped at the chance because it gave me a purpose, because I was almost coming back to work and thinking I don't have a purpose, you know, all the things that I used to do in my previous role. When the sister came to work with us, she said that's what a housekeeper does, and I was like, okay, so something's not quite right. So we adjusted it, and so that's I have a purpose. I feel like coming to work is great, and I think having gone through that, I kind of like feel I've got a little bit of background to sort of help others that, I don't know, other people may have lost a loved one last year, and it was just so different, you know, the whole thing about losing someone, and not just for me, the closure was 12 months long. So I think it kind of gave me that ground to say, look, I've been through stuff, guys, so if you need to speak to me about anything, I kind of had lots of challenges, but I still after the 5 weeks off, I came back to work, and I thought I'm quite resilient, but I didn't know that at the time because I was really low, and everyone's saying you've got to be strong, and I didn't know and didn't understand what being strong meant. But having gone through those things, I kind of feel like I can help others, or even just to advise them or to signpost them to where they need to be, because 12 months ago, there wasn't anything or anyone other than coaching and counselling that I had, you know, to speak to. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for sharing, you know, your personal experience, Joyce. That's really helpful to hear, but also really nice to hear, you know, what you said about that it gave you new kind of meaning or purpose in your role, which is really, really nice. And I think also highlights the importance of if we have some lived experience. And of course, I don't mean that we all have to go through really challenging situations to be able to support others, but most likely we all at some point in our lives will have something we struggle with and find challenging and is difficult. And I think others who then struggle will also pick up on that if what, you know, how we try to support or what we do is also, because of our lived experience, or it's just authentic, if that makes sense. You know, they will see, you know, you basically know what you're talking about, you know, and that can really make people feel, you know, that it feels like a safe space to open up, or also acknowledge if things are really challenging and difficult, because I think there's still the fear if we acknowledge that we may struggle, it might mean people will think we're not able to do our job and all the rest of it. And actually that doesn't mean it at all. It is just an acknowledgement that there are other difficult things going on in our life. And if there is additional support we need, then that is okay. But it doesn't necessarily mean straight away we are not capable of doing something. And I think that's a fear why often people hold it close and not share, because they feel it's not safe to do so.
Yeah.
Melinda, did you still have your hand up as well?
Yeah, sorry, I think it's. I was only going to say, I think the reason I ended up in a wellbeing lead position is because I work in palliative care. So I think people recognised that we have to be good at looking after our well-being because of the nature of our job. And that doesn't make our job more difficult than other people's. It just means that emotionally we see probably a lot more distressing situations on a daily basis. So I think people just assumed that I had some tricks up my sleeve, and I don't know that I do, or I think they might be slightly wonky coping mechanisms. So I'm not sure that I should really share them with people, but it has made me sit and think about my sort of like coping strategies. Apparently an imaginary box on a shelf in your brain, it is entirely acceptable if that's what you need, which is pretty much what I have, which is where most of the scary stuff that I don't want to think about lives. But yeah, I think that was why I ended up doing it. But it's actually really nice, and it means that I've got to work with different people who I wouldn't have worked with if I wasn't doing this. And we've thought of some really fun things to do and some really nice stuff, as well as some of the kind of more serious things as well. So it's good. But I think that was why I ended up doing it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, I really like that, Melinda, what you said, drawing on your coping strategies but also being creative around it. And I think for a lot of professionals working in palliative care, I think there was this notion, a lot of colleagues, then draw on their expertise, or that's how it was felt. And, not to say that other clinical teams don't have, skills or expertise, but I think especially when it came to loss and, sitting with, really difficult and challenging situations, or talking even just about death and dying and being exposed to it, which of course was, part of our job, or still is, but also, Joyce, as you mentioned, for some of us also in our personal life, and for some people that was really new. And I guess for, palliative care healthcare professionals, it's something, we do in our job, and we hopefully have skills in place to manage that unique feature, I suppose. Joyce, I can see your hand up again.
No, I didn't know how to remove it, so it's fine. Okay. Thank you.
Not to worry, that's fine. Shall I just move on to the next slide, just to kind of see, to recap? Sorry, I couldn't get the really nice diagram up May had in her presentation, but basically, when we talked or reflected on the wellbeing role and responsibilities, there were 4 key areas, identified: knowing your team, supporting your team, culture and leadership, and also, of course, self-care. And that's something you guys have already, mentioned a lot today. And of course, in all these, there were different aspects to it. So, for example, knowing your team, identifying maybe strengths within your team, supporting your team, encouraging them to access resources, but also even have discussion about well-being. I know for some teams that was more easy than for other teams who were not so, used to thinking or talking about it. Then also just generally thinking about, things we can implement in our day-to-day working life to enhance well-being and resilience. It shouldn't be just because we're in a global pandemic. Actually, this is something which should always be important to us. Maybe coming back a little bit, Melinda, what you said, that for some teams, this is maybe already something we do more of anyway because of the nature of our job. But then also, of course, the self-care. And again, this is something which shouldn't be important just because we're in a global pandemic. This is something which, we should always have at the forefront, because as we all have, acknowledged multiple times before, it was all easy before the pandemic. There were also really difficult situations we encountered and all the rest of it. So, but just to kind of reiterate that were initially the 4 areas, I guess, from our point of view, were important to kind of have in mind when thinking about responsibilities as a wellbeing lead, or what your role might look like. And I guess just, following on from the discussion we already have or have just started, how do you guys feel if you think back to maybe how you felt, when you were starting out, if you had maybe concerns or, really high expectations or hopes, what might, how you might be as a wellbeing lead, and maybe just reflecting where you are at. Maybe also thinking about, have you encountered challenges on the way? What were maybe positive experiences? I don't know if there's anything anyone would feel comfortable sharing. Or has nothing changed? That, of course, is an option as well, that you guys feel exactly about your role as you started out.
I think one thing that was mentioned in my group earlier, is me, Sarah, speaking. It was the time, kind of, this has been added into our busy schedule already, and sometimes, not every week, but sometimes it'll be weeks that this needs my attention, and it can be a challenge to balance. This one that we mentioned on a previous breakout room.
Absolutely. And I guess this is something we have talked about before as well, haven't we? That, how do we maintain, our commitment to well-being when there are time pressures, when the teams we want to support are under pressure, ourselves are under pressure. It is really difficult then to kind of, maintain that focus. But also, I guess, really this notion, this is never meant, or that this was never meant as almost like another job role, because I know for some people, I think when I had initial discussions with them, they were like, oh my God, I really would like to do this, but I feel like I don't have the capacity, or if this is almost meant like, yeah, I'm applying for another job, and that's definitely not how it was meant. And as I said, definitely doesn't mean that it's only you who have the well-being of others in mind, even if maybe some of your team members may feel like that because you're the dedicated person. But yeah, I can definitely see how time pressures and all the rest of it can be challenging. Anything else you feel may have changed, or maybe also positives or things, reflecting on, Joyce, what you mentioned earlier on, feeling it gave you a sense of purpose as well? Yeah, anything else?
I was just gonna say another thing. I just felt these sessions that we have, it also is like checking for our own well-being, which I think is has been very beneficial. So it's just not looking after others, but it's just us making sure we're well enough to make sure we can deliver and support others. So I think that's been very useful. And the resources, the book, the workbook that was sent a couple of months ago with all the resources, I think that was very, very useful, because it is like a place to go if we have any question to direct anyone. So that was very good work in that workbook, definitely.
Thank you very much for that feedback. And that's, I guess, why also one of the reasons, again, I guess, reflecting on also things Ashley brought to our recent meetings and things he really would like to offer, moving forward, which are hopefully really useful. I think my notion, you guys having at least one opportunity, maybe go back to 2 opportunities in our sessions if you felt that would be more useful, but also to check in with each other, because I think that is, really important, that you also feel like this is now our time in a way. And, we can use this as well for us to look at ourselves, or, look out for each other and support each other, because that is what needed if you're then looking after others as well, of course. Anything else, if you feel, if you just think back? Well,
yeah, I think.
Yeah, sorry, Joyce. Sorry.
For me, Judith. Yeah, I mean, when I attended the workshop, that was brilliant, because I got to meet other people's and hearing other people's experience. And one of the things that was mentioned, that I think 3 or 4 of them signed up for the mental health first aid course with Oxford Mind. And I went back to my line manager and I asked if I could do that, and I'm starting it next week. So I think things for me are just getting better and better, and I'm becoming, I think the Wellbeing Lead is overtaking my role as a dental nurse, but it all combines the 2, because I can do wellbeing, I can do coaching, I can do all these sort of things with my oral health patients, and it's all for the benefit of people at the end of the day. So I think networking and signposting has been a great benefit, and I think if I wasn't able to join these, I mean, like today's my day off, but I still want to, I don't want to miss anything, and I always feel like if I don't join in, I'm missing out on something. I know I can watch the videos, but it's almost like I'd rather be present than to think, oh, I've got to catch up and watch it on the videos. So yeah, it's good. It's positive. It's been a positive experience for me so far.
Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing, Joyce. And I think that is also something, if you guys feel like it enables you maybe, to progress or to learn new skills and all the rest of it, of course, that is really important as well. It can't be just one way that you're looking after others. Of course, if there's this notion, actually, I gained something as well, I might, explore areas, within my professional skill set, or also, generally, what is important to me according to maybe my values. If I think back to one of the sessions Louise Hankinson did, thinking about things which are important to us and, actions we can do or undertake to get closer to that, because I guess at the end of the day, that will also help us to feel satisfied in what we do and confident in what we do. And even if there are, of course, limitations and, we're still facing challenges, but I think that is really important. So it's really nice to hear, Joyce, that you feel it has been such a positive, experience for you. That is really, really nice. And hopefully it ties in also, those kind of courses you already mentioned, the first aid, but also, some of the things Ashley said, hopefully that will also give you guys, a sense of, you can, and not saying you're not doing it already, but, just sometimes having a bit more formal teaching or support or whatever else, it can be really nice as well, getting different ideas, trying different things out. Can be really motivating as well, I suppose. So it sounds like all in all, sorry, I'm just mindful of time, that we slowly have to, I guess, come to an end for today. But it sounds like all in all, it has been a positive experience for you guys to be a well-being lead. And it doesn't sound like people were desperate to kind of stop being well-being leads. Or to be fair, I guess we might not see these people in our meetings here, but so far it sounds like, yeah, it has been a positive experience for you, despite some, of course, challenges you will have encountered, undoubtedly.
I think it's normally a simple thank you from someone that makes a difference sometimes. When people say thank you for listening, that means a lot. And I think there is nothing else bigger than that. Even if somebody got you a present, just to thank you, to say thank you for your time or for just listening, means a lot to me, certainly.
Fantastic. And actually, on that note as well, it's, also really, I guess, nice to think about that. Actually, we also don't need much in a way to be a well-being lead, because that is one of the core aspects generally when we relate or connect with people. It is taking the time to listen. That usually comes out again and again and again. As you said, possibly for the people you are supporting, you will receive that feedback. If I think about, the patient care we provide, that is usually one of the core things when people feel they're satisfied with the care we provide. If they feel we are actually listening to their concerns, to their feedback, even if we can't always do everything, but even if, we can acknowledge that, this is how they're thinking and feeling, I think that goes a really long way. But it also means, like, there's nothing magical in a way. We all can do that. You all have listening skills. You're all empathetic. You're all, supportive. Because I know that sometimes people have said it can feel a little bit overwhelming as well, being the dedicated well-being lead and, having resources to fall back on is really, helpful and all the rest of it. But actually, if we think about it, all we need to do is listening to other people's needs. That is actually something, as I said, yeah, you all are more equipped to do, and well placed to do, if that makes sense. Yeah, I can see a few not there on the screen. And I guess just before we finish, any other final comments or anything you feel would be useful moving forward? Again, I know that Ashley will attend the next Wellbeing Lead Forum. I won't be there because I will be on annual leave, but my colleague Anna Scholz and my colleague Ellie Springham are going to lead the forum, and I think Ashley will be there as well. If you have any further suggestions on what resources or support would be useful for you moving forward, please do let us know or bring it to the next forum, because I think this is also, really an important opportunity to kind of touch base with regards to that, if that makes sense. Yeah, I can see some, sorry, Manpreet, you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I was going to ask about, are we still running our 3P sessions?
Yes.
They are still going on, and we can arrange those?
Definitely. I'm just mindful that over the next week, a few of us are on annual leave, or the email inbox won't always be monitored every day, but they're definitely still running, and definitely someone will get back to you. We are possibly now looking, I think at October dates, maybe even a little bit later already in November. I'm not entirely sure, but they're definitely still running at present.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Excellent. Super.
Can I just ask what the 3P sessions are?
I'm so sorry. We may have, I assume we had talked about this before, you may have seen the resource pack. So basically the R3P sessions are sessions or support session for teams. So teams can enroll onto these sessions. They're meant to be 5 hours long. So I know for some teams that is on a practical level, can be a challenge. Who covers, especially for the clinical teams, then, patient care, whilst others go off. We historically at the moment have not necessarily MDT teams, but usually, nursing team or admin team or, you name it, and people can enroll on. And then the idea is that you guys have protected time and space to reflect on your experience as a team, mainly throughout the pandemic, but of course also maybe where the team feels they're at present. And it's a structured approach. It's really a reflection on, helping to, or the aim is to support recovery from, what we have basically been through in the past 18 months. And there's specific themes then which will, which will lead or covered in the discussion. So for example, thinking a little bit about personal and professional challenges the teams may have encountered, maybe loss and bereavement experiences teams have had, thinking about maybe the concept of vulnerability, that a lot of us suddenly felt very unsafe at work, which was definitely a unique feature of the pandemic, but then also towards, I guess, the end of the day or the 5-hour sessions, thinking a bit about were there any positives the teams feels they may have gained, they want to take forward, what they may need, support systems which could be put in place. It's really, a starting stone or a stepping stone for a lot of teams, just having a chance to come together. And some of the Ask Repeat sessions we have done, we had teams where that session was basically the first time where they were face to face again in a room, which was in itself actually quite emotive or nice. Again, if we reflect on previous meetings we had, thinking about how do we stay connected as teams and all the rest of it. So teams use it in various ways, but there's a specific format in a way we try to follow. Of course, not prescriptive. Some themes are not relevant for some teams, but more for others. And of course, we have a bit of flexibility as well. But that is really the main idea, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that.
And it should be, I think, in the resource pack, I think, which was developed quite some time ago by us, or not by me, but all my colleagues in psychological medicine. I think it was sent out, quite some time ago. That should have more information on that as well. And how to access it. Super.
I think if I can just add to that, it's actually the feedback that we've received, it's fantastic. It's come back with a lot of people saying they loved it. And I was joking, is it the lunch or is it the actual session? Which one did you like more? But it did add a lot of value, and people were just kind of sharing the thoughts and ideas around it.
Fantastic. That's really nice to hear. And again, as with everything, I just always try to highlight to teams that this is just one thing. So we are under no illusion, just because you meet 5 hours as a team doesn't mean all your problems are gone and all the rest of it. But at least it is a starting point, and also an acknowledgement. Let's have some, as I said, safe space or protected time to kind of reflect a little bit what has been going on for us, if that makes sense. Yeah. I'm mindful of time, so we will have to close the session for today. Any other burning questions or queries before we finish for today? Okay. As usual, the presentation will, of course, be available, and also the recording. Possibly it might all happen next week when Anna is back, because I'm unfortunately not in tomorrow to sort it out, but then it will definitely be available. And as I said, I won't be around in 2 weeks' time, but I then definitely see you in 4 weeks' time again. And I hope you guys take care of yourself in the meantime. It was really nice to see you guys today. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.